We were told by a publisher, by an established publisher, that nobody bought monographs. So nobody bought books about designers. Now, that might be true if you want to sell 20,000 copies, but we only make 2,000 copies. And our biggest sellers have all been monographs. So people love the stories of designers, and it's a great example in your own career to read another designer's story and what they did and how they did it. We talk about shining a light into darkened corners, places that other publishers wouldn't necessarily look, because we know the subject. I'm a practicing designer. Spin is my studio. We still run Spin, but I'm a fan as well. I love graphic design, so that's where the insight into the subject that other publishers can't really match comes from, is that we both run our own studios and we know the graphic design world. I run a studio, founded a studio called Spin. As part of the studio, we were commissioned to do some books by a publisher. And I didn't really enjoy the process very much. I wanted more control than I was allowed to have. And I started thinking about the possibility of publishing something myself. And we published several newspaper format. They weren't designed like newspapers, but they were a newspaper format. And we sold them on our website, and they sold very well. And so I started to think more seriously about publishing. And then I met Adrian Shaughnessy, who's a design writer. He used to do a thing called graphic design on the radio, a radio program, where you play some of your favorite songs and you would talk about graphic design. And afterwards I talked to Adrian about the fact that I wanted to set up a publishing company, because I felt that the time that the publishing companies weren't really doing a good enough job. They didn't really understand graphic design and what graphic designers wanted. And also I noticed that graphic designers were making wonderful books for art and for culture and what have you, but not making very good books about graphic design, which is strange. So I had a clear idea in my mind that I wanted to do something that balanced written content and visual content and told some of the stories of graphic design. Now, when I was talking to Adrian after we'd had the radio show, and I was telling him this, he was saying that he'd had a similar idea, that he was interested in going into publishing in some way. And so I said to him, well, why don't we do it together? And so that's what we did. We created Unit Editions together, and I do, Spin does most of the design, the team here do most of the design for Unit Editions, and Adrian does quite a lot of the writing for it, and so it makes a very good team. And I would say that it comes from my desire to make Unit Editions comes from the fact that I'm a collector. I'm a graphic design collector, and there were a lot of wonderful stories that I knew about that other people wouldn't know about, other designers wouldn't necessarily know about, because I'm a collector. And I thought that these would be great things to share, these stories and this wonderful work that I was discovering. Well, a unit is a single piece in a bigger picture, like a pixel. A unit is a single piece. And I like the idea that every book was a unit, was a piece of a bigger picture, and that we were creating a bigger picture of graphic design and visual culture generally. Actually, it's not just graphic design. And so each little unit adds up to a bigger picture, like a pixel does in a digital picture. I spend a lot of time, like everybody does, online, looking at work, but it's a very different thing. A book is a very different thing. A book you take time. It's a great piece of technology, a book, in that it doesn't run out of batteries. You can read it most anywhere. It's got a physical feel to it that's beautiful. So I'm surrounded by books. We're surrounded by books now. Books are something that I think that the physical nature of a book means that it's never going to go out of fashion, really. People are always going to like to have books around. But I think books have a future, definitely. I think it's what I think is that if you're going to chop down a tree to make paper to make a book, you better make a really nice book. And so I feel the responsibility of making a nice book if you're going to chop down a tree to make a book. Now, some trees are grown especially to make paper to make books, but I remember going to the Frankfurt Book Fair in Germany, and before we set up actually, and there were something like 1.5 million books there, different books. I don't know, 90% of them should never have been printed. They were horrible. 90% of them, they were just dreadful. And would have been better as websites, most of them, to be honest. And I think if you need to make a book, and if you're going to make a book, make a beautiful book, make a book that's worth cutting down a tree. So we try to use the resources responsibly. We try to use recycled paper stocks and things like that, and we're reasonably good at it. I'm sure we could be better, but I think the future of books is in our area. It's kind of it's niche, so it won't be that. Or say for instance, school books. I'm sure that school books will more and more become screen based, but you don't have the same connection. They've been doing some research, and people found that you don't learn as well from screen as you do from paper for some reason. And if that's the case, then maybe books are, we're stuck with books just because we absorb information better from them. So that's a bit of a long way of saying that I think that the future of books is that more people can, it's more niche publishing. So small publishers making beautiful things. It's already happening. It's well on its way.